Most people believe that mercy makes you a good person, while control makes you harsh or intimidating. But in reality, the people who hold the most influence are often those who appear calm, reasonable, and even forgiving, while quietly maintaining control over what they tolerate. Because when mercy is misunderstood, it turns into weakness. And when control is misunderstood, it turns into aggression. The real difference between the two is not about morality. It is about whether your behavior is a conscious choice or a reaction to pressure. This is not about becoming manipulative or cold. It is about understanding how human behavior actually works. Because whether you like it or not, people respond to patterns. They respond to what you allow, what you ignore, and what you enforce. And if you do not understand the difference between mercy and control, you will find yourself in situations where you are trying to be kind, but you are being taken advantage of instead. The ideas in The Prince by Niccolò Machiavelli are often misunderstood. He was not encouraging cruelty. He was explaining reality. A reality where people do not respond to intentions as much as they respond to consequences and consistency. If you rely only on being kind, you may lose control. If you rely only on control, you may lose trust. Understanding both is what allows you to navigate situations without being naive or unnecessarily harsh. In this video, you will understand the practical difference between mercy and control. You will see why constant forgiveness can reduce your influence, why aggressive control creates resistance, and how real authority comes from balancing both in a deliberate and consistent way. As you listen, think about your own interactions. Think about the moments where you chose to overlook something, and ask yourself honestly, was that mercy or was it avoidance? Section 1. Mercy without boundaries becomes permission. Mercy seems simple at first. It sounds like choosing kindness, choosing to let something slide. But mercy only has meaning when there is a boundary that could be enforced. If there is no line to cross, there is nothing to forgive. Without a boundary, mercy just becomes tolerance. Think about a person who is consistently late. The first time, it might feel like a small issue. They arrive smiling, say, "Sorry, traffic." You know it's not really traffic. You feel that small tightening in your chest, that hesitation. You could address it, but you choose not to. You let it pass. The next time, they are late again, and the pattern continues. You notice it. You register the small signals, checking their phone, casual tone, but you say nothing. Each time you let it pass, the line gets blurred. What felt uncomfortable before begins to feel normal. It's not that they intend to disrespect you. It's that human behavior adjusts to what is allowed. If there are no consequences, people naturally test the boundaries. They try small steps first, then larger ones. Silence communicates more than confrontation. Your inaction sends a message. It tells others where the line is or that there is no line at all. Consider another example. Someone speaks in a dismissive or careless tone. You feel it immediately. Your face shifts. There is a pause before you respond. They notice the hesitation. For a moment, they wonder if they went too far. Then you laugh it off. You move on. You don't challenge it. That single choice signals something powerful. It signals that this is acceptable. Over time, these moments accumulate. People begin to assume your boundaries are flexible. They stop questioning how far they can go. The pattern is subtle. It doesn't require an argument or a confrontation. Just repeated choices to let things slide. And slowly, mercy turns into permission. What you originally considered patience or understanding is interpreted differently. Others don't see mercy. They see acceptance. They adjust their behavior to match what is allowed. Small disrespect, lateness, broken promises, these are all signals. If they are tolerated repeatedly, they become standard. You realize, quietly, that what you allowed once has a momentum of its own. What started as mercy becomes something else entirely. It is no longer a choice. It is the space you leave open. The boundaries that were never enforced shape reality. And there is no sudden moment you can point to. No explicit permission given. Just a series of small actions or non-pro actions that have added up. The behavior you overlooked now feels normal to everyone involved. This is why boundaries matter. Mercy without boundaries loses its meaning. What you intended as kindness becomes interpreted as allowance. Over time, people stop asking. They stop hesitating. They simply act. And nothing changes unless something stops them. So when mercy is offered without limits, it quietly becomes permission. Section 2. Control is structure, not aggression. Control is often misunderstood. Many people think it means force, loudness, dominance, but it rarely looks like that in reality. Real control is quieter. It is structured. It is not about making noise, not about proving who is stronger. It is about being clear, about defining what is acceptable, and responding in a way that is consistent. Every time. Imagine this. Someone crosses a boundary. Maybe they take more than their share of your time. Maybe they speak over you in a meeting. Your first instinct might be to react with frustration, anger, a sharp word. But that is not control. That is reaction. Control looks different. You notice the behavior. You acknowledge it. Then you adjust. Not angrily, not loudly. Simply, predictably. You reduce access. You withdraw cooperation. You let your actions communicate what is acceptable. They might not realize it at first. But over time, patterns form. They see the consistent response. The way certain behavior always has a consequence. And they begin to understand your expectations not because you explain them, but because your behavior makes it clear. Consider another moment. A colleague keeps missing deadlines. You stop giving them extra leeway. You limit the support you offer. You continue to work with them but on your terms. Every time they miss a deadline, the same consequence occurs. There is no yelling, no grand announcement, just structure, just predictability. At first, they might push back, test the limits. That is natural. But when your response never changes, they begin to adjust. They stop guessing what is allowed. They stop assuming flexibility. This is what creates respect. Not fear, not tension, not control through intimidation. Control comes from clarity and follow-through, from knowing what is acceptable and acting consistently. And the people around you notice. Even if they don't say anything, they notice the quiet rules, the boundaries reinforced by action. They notice that you don't bend arbitrarily, that the line never moves. Over time, this predictability shapes behavior. It sets a rhythm. People move within it. They understand what is expected without you having to repeat it. Control, then, is not aggression. It is structure. Section 3. The illusion of kindness. There is a kind of kindness that does not come from strength. It comes from discomfort, from the desire to avoid conflict, to avoid being disliked, to avoid difficult conversations. Think about a meeting. Someone interrupts you, or challenges your idea in a way that feels off. You notice it. You feel that small tension, that flicker of irritation. You could respond, but you don't. Instead, you nod, you smile, you let it go. At first, it feels like kindness. You tell yourself, I'm being patient. I'm letting it slide. You want peace. You want no confrontation. You want people to like you. But on the other side, it doesn't feel like peace. There is a quiet unease. You notice the hesitation in your voice, the tiny pause before you speak, the way you avoid certain topics. And the people around you notice it too. Not in a loud way, not consciously, but they sense it. That hesitation, that uncertainty, that pause before you act. It invites testing. The next time someone crosses the same line or a different one, they push a little further, a little bolder, a little more careless. They are not plotting. They are just moving based on what happens next. You let it slide again. You tell yourself it's kindness. You tell yourself you are choosing restraint. But it is not. What looks like mercy from the outside is actually avoidance. It is the absence of action, the lack of structure, the quiet refusal to enforce a line. Imagine a friend who borrows things and doesn't return them. At first, you ask. The response is weak. They say, I'll bring it later. You let it go. The next time, they borrow again and again. Each time, the small silence you keep communicates something. It is okay. You might think you are being generous, that you are patient, but the reality is that mercy requires choice. It requires having the ability to act, the ability to enforce boundaries. Without that, kindness is only an illusion. It is hesitation. It is discomfort disguised as patience. And hesitation always invites testing. People naturally explore limits. They see what is allowed. They feel what can be taken without consequence. And without clear boundaries, the testing continues. Slowly, subtly, quietly. True restraint comes from strength. From knowing you could act, but choosing not to for the right reasons. Not because it is easier to avoid confrontation. Not because you are afraid of being disliked. Without that ability, what seems like mercy is often only avoidance. And avoidance does not command respect. It does not create clarity. It does not guide behavior. It only leaves the line undefined. And in that space, people will quietly, naturally, move. Because no one has told them where to stop. Section 4. Strategic mercy builds loyalty. Mercy becomes meaningful when it is deliberate. Not automatic. Not constant. Not something you give simply to avoid conflict. Think about it like this. People notice patterns. They notice what is enforced and what is ignored. They notice when rules are consistent. They notice when boundaries are firm. Now imagine someone makes a mistake. They expect a negative consequence. Maybe a missed deadline. Maybe a rude comment. Maybe a broken promise. But instead of reacting in the predictable way, you choose differently. You give them another chance. You show restraint. The effect is immediate, even if subtle. They pause. They notice that hesitation in their own behavior, that flicker of surprise. You could have enforced the boundary. You could have reacted, but you didn't. It sends a message without words. It signals that you are in control, that your actions are choices, not impulses, that you respond with intention. And that creates a shift. They feel it. Appreciation grows, quietly. Not because they are indebted, not because they are afraid, but because they understand that your mercy is earned, that it is a choice, not a given. But this only works if mercy is not constant. If forgiveness is always the default, it loses meaning. If boundaries are always bent, people stop noticing when they are enforced. They stop respecting the choice. Selectivity is what gives mercy weight. It becomes meaningful when it is rare, when it carries consequence. When people understand that you could act differently and sometimes do, it builds loyalty, quiet loyalty, the kind that comes from respect rather than obligation. People adjust not just to your rules, but to your discretion. They notice when you choose restraint, and it shapes their behavior toward you. Mercy is not weakness. It is not an absence of standards. It is a tool, a signal, a demonstration of control. And when it is used with intention, it carries far more weight than punishment ever could. Section 5. Inconsistency weakens authority. One of the most common mistakes people make is being unpredictable. Some tolerate behavior for a long time. They let things slide repeatedly, and then, suddenly, they react strongly. The patience runs out. There is anger. There is confrontation. From the person's perspective, it feels justified. They waited long enough. They reached a breaking point. But from the outside, it looks different. It looks inconsistent. Imagine a coworker who consistently misses deadlines. Sometimes you address it quietly. Sometimes you let it pass. Then, one day, you suddenly reprimand them sharply. They are startled, confused. They wonder why it took this long. They wonder what will happen next time. This unpredictability creates uncertainty. People stop knowing where they stand. They stop respecting the boundary because they cannot predict the consequences. They begin to test limits more often. Not because they want to be difficult, not consciously, but because they have no way of knowing what is allowed and what is not. The outcomes feel random. Authority does not come from emotional reactions. It does not come from sudden displays of anger or force. Authority comes from patterns, from consistency, from knowing exactly what happens when a boundary is crossed. If someone knows the consequence, they understand the rules. They adjust their behavior. They operate within the structure. Clarity builds respect, not fear. Predictable responses create a sense of order. People are not worried about punishment. They are clear on the limits. But when responses are inconsistent, the limits disappear. The line moves without explanation. People push. They experiment. They slowly ignore what was once respected. And over time, the inconsistency erodes authority, quietly, without any dramatic moment, without any announcement. Authority is not a single event. It is a pattern, a rhythm, a structure that others can rely on. When that structure is unclear, respect fades, confidence in leadership fades, and what was once clear becomes uncertain. Section 6. The balance between mercy and control. Mercy and control are not opposites. They are connected. They work together. Control sets the framework. It defines what is acceptable. It draws the lines. It makes clear what will and will not be tolerated. Mercy gives flexibility within that framework. It allows judgment, understanding, room for mistakes. Think about a workplace example. A team member misses a deadline. Control would be to enforce the consequence every single time. Mercury is giving them a second chance, but only in certain situations. Not because you are inconsistent, not because you are unsure, but because you intentionally choose when to bend the rules. Control creates order and predictability. People know what to expect. They know the boundaries. They adjust their behavior to fit those lines. Mercy allows for human judgment. It lets the occasional mistake or the unexpected situation exist without immediate penalty. It creates appreciation. It shows that the rules are meaningful, not arbitrary. If you rely only on control, people will comply. But they may also feel restricted. They may resent the structure. They may obey, but quietly push back in ways you cannot see. If you rely only on mercy, people will feel comfortable, but they may also take advantage of the lack of clear limits. They may test the boundaries until they disappear. The key is balance. Firm standards, clear lines, but selectivity in when you relax them. When mercy is given intentionally, it communicates strength, not weakness. It signals that your decisions are deliberate, that they are not reactive, that you are not just giving in to avoid discomfort. People notice this, even if they do not say it aloud. They see that your choices matter, that boundaries are meaningful, that mercy is earned, and in that balance, authority and respect coexist. People know the line. They know there is structure. They know there is space for discretion. Strength shows itself not in rigidity, but in knowing when to enforce and when to allow. And when that balance is maintained, behavior falls into rhythm, predictable, clear, respectful. Over the next few days, observe your own behavior. Pay attention to situations where you feel uncomfortable addressing something. Notice where you allow behavior to continue, even though it goes against your standards. Then, choose one situation where you will respond differently. Set a clear boundary, and follow through with it calmly. Do not over-explain. Do not become emotional. Simply act in alignment with what you consider acceptable. Because influence is not built in a single moment. It is built through repeated, consistent actions. Mercy is not about being soft. Control is not about being harsh. Both are tools, and their effectiveness depends on whether you are choosing them deliberately or defaulting to them out of habit or discomfort. If you cannot enforce boundaries, your kindness is limited. If you cannot show restraint, your control becomes rigid. Real strength is the ability to do both, and to know when each is appropriate. If you want to understand power, discipline, and human behavior on a deeper level, subscribe to The Less You Look. Because the more you understand what drives people's actions, the more control you have over your own. In the end, people do not respond to what you say about yourself. They respond to what you consistently do. They notice what you tolerate. They notice what you enforce. And over time, those patterns define how they treat you. So the real question is not whether you are merciful or controlling. The real question is whether your behavior is intentional. Because only when you can choose both, do you actually have power.